Yeah.
And we still expect at some point for the Minister of Economic Planning and Development to join us. So this is fully loaded. At this press conference, you are going to get several for the price of one. Today's session is part of the demonstration of this government's commitment to transparency and accountable leadership. We came to power on the basis of those cardinal pledges. Recently, you all are aware that His Excellency the President led a very high-powered multidisciplinary delegation to the Forum on China-African Summit in the People's Republic of China. Unlike many others, this was a double whammy for us. His Excellency not only went there as a member of FOCA, but also he enjoyed the singular and unique privilege of a state visit, which was accorded him by the People's Republic of China. Many things happened since we went there, but my role at today's session is to ensure that I steer the ship to a very, very decorous, anchor. So I am not going to be the subject today. I'm going to facilitate other people to give you the information you so desire. Probably during question and answer sessions, if there's anything pertinent and exclusive to the ministry, I will respond to them. So at this point, I'm going to ask my friend and colleague, Mr. Yusuf Keketomas Kandi, who is the State House, the Presidential Press Secretary, to give us an overview of the trip. Sectoral issues will be addressed by the ministers concerned. We want to keep it short, we want to keep it to the point, and ensure that you are afforded a good time to interact and ask pertinent questions so that you can seek clarifications where there are any issues requiring that. So on that note, I ask Mr. Keketomas Kandi to give a brief overview of the visit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and thank you, members of the Fourth Estate. I'm very happy to be here and to engage you with our goodies from China. Now, just to start, I'd like to give you a background of the invite to the President for the state visit and also FOCA. It all started when we went to Nouakchott, Mauritania, when we went for AU, and then the Chinese Minister for Africa had a bilateral with the President. And it was in that meeting that he made the invitation from the President Xi Jinping. And he also expressed that Xi Jinping is very impressed with the President's economic recovery initiatives at home and also its secondary approach. And therefore, that an invite has been granted for him to visit China. thereafter, obviously, we went into the preparations for the visit. Now, like the minister said, it was a visit with a twin approach. Firstly, it was a state visit, and you can remember that my office released the media announcement about the visit, and we did state that we were going for the state visit, which was on the 30th, and also the FOCAC. Now, upon arrival, when we went there, we were graciously received by no less a person than the President of China, Xi Jinping. We had a very good and welcoming bilateral meetings where agreements were signed, and I think the ministers are here to discuss further details of those agreements. But also we had a state dinner as well with the President of China, which was very interactive, and also the ministers we went with had their counterparts. And throughout that, obviously, there was a good camaraderie between our president and President Xi Jinping, and they spoke about a lot of things, and they discussed about deepening the bilateral relationship. After that, we also did few visits to various provinces and cities, one of which was we went to Shanghai city, and at Shanghai visit we went to various places and also held discussion with the... Is there any phone around? Sure, mine is off, so that's fine. Sorry for the interruption. In Shanghai also we held meeting between the president and the local government there, and whilst we were there, it was a very beautiful city. The president had a lot of bilateral relationship with also companies who want to come and invest there. And then from Shanghai we came back to Beijing, where also we continued with meetings with various companies, investors who are planning or have expressed interest to come to Sierra Leone to help us with our investment process. Now, this is the president who said during campaign that he wants to do economic diversification. So obviously focused on agriculture, trade, tourism, and a few other things. But the ministers are here to discuss details of those bilateral meetings that I had. From Beijing, after the state visit, we also we are up for the FOCAC. The FOCAC, they had their round table, and also during that time we held a meeting between the president and the premier of China, which I think was also something very exciting as well, because this was not only a man who was meeting with the president of China, but also meeting with very important people in China. That was also very productive. From the meeting as well, we had the FOCAC at the round table where a lot of things were agreed at heads of state level. And I believe that the Minister of Information will give more details on what we agreed in terms of debt cancellation, in terms of money put aside to invest in Africa, about the 60 billion that China has pledged. And from there, we also went to Hunan province. At Hunan province, we made several visits, but one important one that we did was to Shenzhen Hospital, which is a hospital which has been helping us for over 20 years. Every year they send medical teams to Sierra Leone. If you remember, at Jue they have the China Sierra Leone Friendship Hospital, and it was very, very passionate, because you had people who had worked in Sierra Leone before, like doctors giving their testimonies about how hospitable we are as a country. But one of the things which was made clear was President saying thank you to them, and they felt very appreciative for the head of state of the country to visit the hospital and say thank you for what they've done. From the hospital visit, we also had, the president had a singular privilege and opportunity to address the Investing in Africa Forum. This was a forum where only 2 presidents out of the 53 or 54 were invited. And for all of the country, we should be very proud that our president was given the opportunity to address investors from all over Africa and also different parts of the world. In his address, as well as usual, he spoke about the need for investors to come to Sierra Leone, and he spoke about the potentials that Africa has, that's for people to come. But specifically, he spoke about Sierra Leone, our arable land, mineral resources, and many things. But he also assured the investors that even if they had had bad experience in the past, we're a new government and we're committed to making sure that we create a living environment. So from the Invest in Africa Forum, the very dynamic Minister of Finance was left behind to do follow-ups, and thereafter we were given a very good reception again in Beijing, where we took an exit. So on the whole, Mr. Minister, it was a very remarkable visit. It was very historic, and we're very proud as a government and as a country for what the president has achieved, and we hope that members of the Fourth Estate will help us to share our message and the good news, because sometimes with the press, it's not only the bad news. We also want you to help us to move the good news across. And we know we are partners in development. Like I did say the other day when I went to radio yesterday, that we also encourage members of the opposition party as well. This is constructive engagement we want to have, for them to share in the good news, because in the next 5 years, we want this country to be different. We want government and the opposition and the press, for all of us to be part of this development. So thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much, Yusuf Keke Thomas Sandy. That was a good and befitting overview. Like I always say, dynamites come in very small parcels. He spoke, and there's absolutely very little to have done in an overview. Thank you very much. Now we come to the subject matter experts. In our government, literally everybody who manages a portfolio is a subject matter expert. I'm going to start with the gentleman on the far left there, Mr. Joseph Danema. Because when we went to China, one of the things President Bill never missed an opportunity to talk about was his desire, his passion to feed his 7.3 million people. Because China is already feeding 1.4 billion people. So I'm going to ask the man in whom President Bill has reposed the authority to support him feed all of us, so that we don't go to bed hungry by the time President Bill leaves office. Mr. Joe Danema, your moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. With regard to agriculture, we had a very welcoming meetings with various stakeholders. Of course, our task there was really to explain ourselves as to what actually we want in terms of cooperation and support. We expressed our interest in making the country self-sufficient in food production, and also making sure agriculture serves as one of the engines that drives the economy of this country. Our flagship crop, which is rice, is known to the Chinese. So we had made several contacts. We had a lot of interest, according to our press secretary. The moment the head of state of China expressed full support for His Excellency, the retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, the rest followed. So everybody was chasing out for them to have the opportunity to talk and do business with us. Now we had various companies that came up, and we were able to at least identify two, one of which was to do 35,000 hectares of rice in Sierra Leone. They had already done a lot of feasibility studies, and what we are going to do now is to carry on from there in terms of reviewing agreements, and then making sure we do our work plan to kickstart coming next season. And then, of course, that same company is doing rubber plantation for about 10,000 hectares, which is also a welcome, which is a very good cash crop, which is equally welcome. But most striking was the issue of seed. Because one of the problems we have in this country, which is responsible for the low productivity and low yield, is the type of seeds that we are continuously recycling in the field. So we are given the opportunity to visit a well-renowned seed institution, seed production institution, seed research institution. As a matter of fact, the man who developed the hybrids, the rice hybrid seed, is now in his 90s. We met him firsthand. His Excellency, we had a lot of discussion with them, and they are prepared to come over. As a matter of fact, they are coming by next month. We are starting the whole process of seed production, or seed preparation for seed production in the country. While we have a production level of 0.5 to 1.5 tons per hectare, they can give us 7.5 tons per hectare, and their hybrid can be produced twice in a year. That is, you are talking about 15 tons per hectare. So, and that is quite impressive. And we are going to pursue that to make sure Sierra Leone also produces that. Of course, in addition to that, we are in contact with other producers, which also adds up. Next, we are talking about also training, the opportunity to transfer technology in the field of agriculture, which can help us to boost our production and increase our productivity. And that also, we have institutions that are willing and ready, with whom we have already spoken and with whom we are in contact now. My ministry is in contact now to get their support. There are other related issues in terms of agriculture, which is also dealing with mechanization. Mechanization, which is very closely related to irrigation. Because while we are producing less because one of the reasons is that we produce only based on the weather, the natural weather setting. That means we follow the rainy season. Once the rainy season is gone, we wait for the next. And through that, our productivity drastically becomes inefficient. So irrigation technology will be introduced by next planting season surely, which can lend us the opportunity to produce twice or three times the crops, the same crop, in the same field in a year. And that will lend us more production, and that will help us. Of course, the other area of bilateral value addition aspect. We are prone at the moment to a problem that is going to change. We want to add value to what we produce so that we can export it, and of course, even within the internal market situation, we can improve the product to our consumers. With that, in terms of scholarships, I mean, technology transfer, knowledge transfer, there are a lot of consent to train our people, give them the requisite know-how and technique of how they can efficiently carry out agriculture. And there comes in the issue of cooperatives also, so that people can come together and do business in agriculture. We learned from the Chinese that agriculture is actually a business enterprise, not a charity. So therefore, with all this knowledge, with all these provisions or interactions, I think we are now set, in addition to other countries' support, to get the ball rolling come the next season. Mr. Chairman, this is so far I can say, and open to any questions or further discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Danema. You justified the trust and confidence. You gave quite a very in-depth insight, quite very detailed account of what happened in China. I know you want to keep the best for the last. You did not mention the support we'll be getting in direct food aid, but I'm sure you want to leave that for Q&A, and I'm going to respect your will. At this juncture, I'd like to call on the Trade Minister, Mr. Peter Ayuku Conte, to take us through his own side of the Beijing visit. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Good afternoon, fellow Sierra Leoneans. Yes, thank you. I am happy to be here and to tell you that I was part of the delegation to China. Why was I invited? I was invited because the China-Africa Forum is all about investment, about trade, about development, not only in Africa but also in China. It's all about a solid or creating a solid collaboration between China and Africa. That was why I was there, and I'm pleased to tell you that the Chinese president made it very clear that he is very much interested in investing in Sierra Leone and promoting more trade in Sierra Leone, and that he was saying so because of the fact that he believes that we now have a very competent president, very trustworthy, and one who is resolute. So he said that he will ensure that he will mobilize the business community of China to come and invest in Sierra Leone. And of course, I happen to have had dinner with the Chinese Secretary of Commerce, who also affirmed what the president said, the Chinese president said. He told me that we want to do bigger business in Sierra Leone. I said, fine, you are welcome. I said, this is the right moment. But then he said, give me reasons why this is the right time. I told him that it's because right now we have a new government, with a very competent president, a very trustworthy president, and also a president that is result-oriented, a president that wants to transform Sierra Leone. So I told him that he should also help join his president to mobilize the business community of China to come and do business in Sierra Leone. And of course, in less than 3 days, I met with 122 investors that are ready to invest in different sectors. And by the way, in the next 3 weeks, we should begin to see some of them coming to Sierra Leone to look at various possibilities to invest in. And there's one company in particular that is called Poly Technologies that is interested in, of course, establishing industries in Sierra Leone, especially industries that have to do with manufacturing. So, of course, they told me that they will be here in the next 3 weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, the opportunities that I was faced with were huge. And I want to tell you that Sierra Leone is now open for business, and that the president has sold our country positively, and that I was particularly very much impressed with the president because he was very interested in knowing the companies that are planning to come here. He was asking all sorts of questions concerning, I mean, where they have been working, maybe in Africa, their portfolio, and what they want to come and do in Sierra Leone. So it's a sign of a president who knows what he's doing. And I believe that in the next months and years to come, the concept of the Minister of Trade and Industry to promote one industry per district will be actualized. I believe so. I firmly believe so. And not only that, we will see more industries in this country, far more than we have ever seen before. And I will provide the leadership in my ministry to make sure that the vision of the president to decentralize development, to create employment opportunities for our youth, is being actualized. So I think this is what I have to say. And then if there are questions, I'll be ready to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very right, Honorable Mr. Peter Bayuku-Conte. And just to add a few things, you are all aware that during the campaign and in the state opening of Parliament, President Bureau has always reiterated his commitment to creating an enabling environment for businesses to invest and to thrive. We are quite confident that a booming private sector has the capacity to attract much needed jobs for our army of very able young people. We are also aware that with a thriving private sector, government will add much needed tax revenues to provide basic social services. So that is important for us. So at every inch, during every opportunity presented him during the Beijing conference or during our stay in China, President Biu re-echoed our readiness to create an enabling private sector. Amongst other things, he did say, we are a democracy that respects the rule of law, separation of powers. We are the world's third most peaceful country. We have clamped down very heavily on corruption. What more can a potential investor look for, apart from, in addition to our multiplicity of opportunities, vast arable land, all year beautiful weather, large potentials in both our extractive and tourism sectors. So yes, he indeed marketed Sierra Leone. I will not join my friend Peter to say he sold Sierra Leone, because I know some of my friends, by the time we leave here, the newspaper headlines will be, the screaming banner headlines will be, Mother Bill sells Sierra Leone to China. We did not sell Sierra Leone. We market, I know, I have been here for a long time. I know my brothers and sisters around the table. Some people suffer from selective amnesia. They will deliberately not remember the positive. They will just say Mother Bill sells Sierra Leone to China in China. Anyway, he very effectively marketed our country's potential and announced. That would be something for the Minister of Finance to say and announce the country is ready for business. My friend and colleague also said that President Bill was very keen to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of yesteryears. So, even though a lot of companies showed interest in our investment potentials and opportunities, he also was not carried away. He insisted on knowing the background of each and every one of those investors, their profile, their track record, and what have you. This was to guard against opening a floodgate for fly-by-night investors to descend on our country. We want to live by the proud legacy. We want sustainable investment. We want investment to the human face. In fact, the whole concept of FOCAC within the context of the Belt and Road Initiative is to ensure that you do businesses, on the basis of consultation, on the basis of collaboration, on the basis of cooperation, and on the basis of win-win, mutual benefits. So we now have a relationship with China where we have equal partnership, win-win, mutual benefits. Nobody is going to be unequal to the other in this relationship. That is very important to note, because you have naysayers who always imagine what they want to imagine. But the context is very important. African leaders like President Bill said in his interview on one of China TV stations are not fools. They all know where they want to take their countries, and I'm sure every African leader, well-meaning African leader, wants to take their countries out of poverty, to be able to provide basic social services, to be able to create wealth, and to lead their countries to prosperity. That is the kind of opportunity the Belt and Road Initiative, the context in which FOCAC operates, is all about. And that is the context in which Sierra Leone will be rolling out our next business plans. Okay, at this point, it is my singular pleasure to welcome Mr. Jacob Jesus Safa, the Minister of Finance, and the man who was at the center of developing our blueprint from campaign to government to speak to the issues as Minister of Finance, the things that they have to do with his ministry, overall health and well-being of the economy. Mr. Jacob Jesus Safa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Members of the press, thank you for coming to hear the good news. Before I get into the good news, maybe I need to do the context for us to understand where we're coming from. Financing development takes different forms. We have our traditional forms of financing development. Of course, one is from the budget. This government is committed to raising the domestic revenue GDP ratio from its current level as at 2017 of 12.7% to 20% in 2023. We are currently around 15%, 15.4%. But no matter what we do, the budget resources are not going to be adequate. They have to be supported by traditional partners, notably the international financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF. Of course, you have the bilateral, the DFI, the EU, and the likes. But they provide mostly grants and loans. But even that those resources they provide are not adequate to take us from one stage to another, particularly for massive development. They're not adequate. So, in the new direction, we'll be looking for private capital. Private capital that will not pose ill-contingent liability on government. In the sense, the interest rates may be within reach, concessional loans, private capital that has got a fairly long time period, repayment period, private capital that has got a design model compatible with our strategy of not imposing contingent liability on the government. What does that mean? You don't want to go for a loan for 5% interest rate, for example, or a loan that you have to pay over a 5-year period, or a loan that creates problem for you, that will not generate resources. You don't want to take public capital loans to come and build a school that is not going to give immediate returns. So our strategy is that we want to use financing models to finance our new development plans using for private capital. And one of the markets you can get private capital from China. You can have it elsewhere, but China is a very good source for private capital. That's why countries like South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, every country in Africa is benefiting from China. We have massive projects ranging from 1 billion to 3 billion to 5 billion in Ethiopia and other places. These are very serious countries. There is nothing absolutely wrong with private capital. What is the problem is the content of the negotiations, of the agreements, and the financing models. So what we are doing, we're focusing our support on what? We want to focus on infrastructure that can generate revenue. Infrastructure that can generate revenue. You may recall that before now, you may recall that the last regime had 2 agreements, which we have not implemented because the terms and conditions that we think are not favorable. And luckily, we are not implemented by the time they were in power. The one is the Mamama project, which we cannot start because we don't think it's the correct way to go. It could have been better. The other one is the port expansion, which we have not. It could have been better. It's subject to review, but we have not started it, stalled it, because we don't think that's the right way to go. So what we are doing now, we're looking for what we call design builds of data transfers. That's why we heard about the Power China for the Longe Bridge. You know, the Longe Bridge has a lot of advantages. What apart from increasing accessibility to the city but the accessibility to the airport, it also expands the city that end of the country. I mean, it reduces the congestions in Freetown possibly. I mean, to us, that's useful. It does not only increase accessibility, but it expands the country. But that is nearly $1 billion project, which cannot be financed from the budget or from traditional donors. So you have to look at the private capital. And therefore, the possible source for it is Chinese. Chinese do not necessarily go directly with loans. They normally pass it through their banks. Through the banks, normally there's the contractors they get are the Chinese people. The Chinese people access the loans, they pass the loan to the government and execute a project. But when you do things like the loan gateway, the best way to get money out from it is the toll road. The alternatives are so many. If you want, you can use the ferry services. If you want, you can pass through Colombia. Or you want to use the sea coast. So with that's one design. So I wanted to understand why we go to China. Because it's only China that can provide you that quantum of resources that you require for massive projects of that type. Now, the Minister of Finance has to go because he understands the financing model that will not impose continual liabilities on government. That's one. Gone are the days where it pleases the President and State House, go into an agreement, the reporting for the government. We never enter a situation like that. As I speak to you, the debt, the liability, the recent figures we just got from the SLRA, I mean, the liabilities to government runs up to $1.5 billion. Just on roads, $1.5 billion. Our initial estimate was nearly half of that, about $700 million. But now the real figure we got now for liabilities from the Ministry of Finance and the RMFA, $1.5 billion. Because somebody was just sitting somewhere in the bar and saying, go and make this road in Waterloo, go and do this road there, go and do this road there. Without feasibility studies. So that is change of the power. That's the wrong direction. In the new direction, the Ministry of Finance has to be part of it. So I went there to look at whatever investment proposals on the table, to look at the financing model, to look at the impact of that financing model on our debt burden, to look at the impact of that financing model on our budget. That was important. Now, the other reasons why the Minister of Finance has to go there, investment do not come lightly. You have to give some concessions here and there. So if somebody wants to come to manufacturing, first of all, I needed to tell them that sectors like agricultural sector, health sector, and education sectors have got priority in terms of concessions. I mean, that's part of the new direction, that we can give you as much concession as possible if you are investing in sectors producing inputs for the schools. For example, we are producing books, pens, learning and teaching materials. Pharmaceuticals, for the health sector, we are ready to provide concessions for you. Farm inputs, farm implements, we are ready to provide concessions for you. So all those opportunities we are put on the table, but to attract the business people. So definitely, whatever investment, be it trade, be it industry, manufacturing, be it infrastructure, the Minister of Finance has to be part of the negotiation to make sure that it does not pose unnecessary burden on the budget. Now, that is the bigger context why we went to China. I know people are going to say yesterday, you know, I didn't say China. As a matter of fact, we never said we didn't want China. That was the situation. We need to clarify right away before we go into it. The situation was that there was an allegation of an investment in a 7-story office for a party, and we thought that was an interference. As a party, what we did was to engage the Chinese embassy here for clarification. They did clarifications to us, then we went forward. But we are living in a free world where people have the right to argue here and there. So some of us argue, and there were cases where Chinese people were dressed in APC attire, running around, canvassing, and to get an impression that we are the haters of China. No, we are not the haters of China. We cannot be friends. We are, the national interest comes first. Bank assurance I can give you, as long as you are a good investor, we are ready to embrace you. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, countries like South Africa, Kenya, they have got a very good deals with China. If the Chinese find you as a government to be corrupt, they corrupt you. If they find you as a serious government, they treat you seriously. They are respecters of laws. And trust us, two things we are not going to do. We are not going to give ourselves cheap to any investor. That's one. And that's one of the things they are so pleased about. There were several arrangements in the past government that got stalled because the people were asking for kick funds, not kickbacks. Kick funds normally pay before even the thing starts. It was not easy. It was To see the Minister of Finance, the Minister of this, those days, you have to give something to some of the middlemen. No, before you give something. There are police that allow them access. We talk to them. They are coming. This is something they told us. So the visit also created a platform to give them that confidence. No, we are not. It's not business as usual. These are the opportunities. Come and invest. We are ready to open the doors for you. That's one. We are not going to allow. We're going to negotiate. It's also very bad to do negotiations on the basis of data generated by them. I mean, that was the basis of the toll road, for example. You don't have a feasibility study on the part of government? No. So what we are doing now as a follow-up to some of our things, we are putting teams together to do feasibility studies for some of these proposals that have come forward to us. So we have our own figures. So when we are negotiating for a position of strength. That's two fundamental things we're going to do. We have independent data and information on which we can use as a basis to negotiate. We're putting that thing together. They've already started working on the priority project. Then two, we make sure that whatever they're doing is not posing burden on the budget. Then, now, now in the area of what we did, the Chinese pledged to give a total sum of 250 million RMB, which approximates to something like $40 million. They call it free assistance. It basically means budgetary support. 40 million budgetary support compared to 30 million to the World Bank, 25 to the EU, 20 for ADB, and so on and so forth. But as they go, and they are not plan actions. That you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So that's fine. So that's going to support them. That's, I've even done the letter. We'll send it to them. They'll send the money to our budget. We can use that, expand our space for our free education and other social services. And you realize that we are currently pursuing contractual fiscal policy. But that means we are not making much payments out because we want to keep our deficit low to the situation under control. If I got an expansionary mode of spending, what would have happened? The economy would have crashed. People don't have the resources. So that's why a lot of construction activities have come to a stop. But that's not good for the economy. The economy is too tight. We need to expand the economy. Luckily, the IMF mission is coming in 19th. We're going to complete the negotiations. We go to the board by November. But before the comfort letters will be issued, then we will get to inflows. I mean, without those inflows, the exchange will be put under serious pressure as it is. But the moment you get inflows, believe me, those who want to keep their dollar, they can keep their dollar. But we are capable of bringing the dollar down to a manageable level, but very competitive. So, Chinese are going to give us that amount, 250 million RMB, roughly 39 to $40 million, which is quite good. That's going to pay support. We're going to cancel our debt. I've just asked the debt unit to compile all the debt figures for us. That's not only for Sierra Leone, for other countries. That's on the Chinese side. Then the reason somebody is going to ask why Sierra Leone? Sierra Leone was chosen because the Chinese have followed the reforms. Remember, the Chinese are also part of the IMF, the World Bank. They are all over the place. They are also following the reforms. They know we are on top of business. They know we are doing things correctly. And they're looking at Sierra Leone as an emerging African country with determined leadership, ready to go. So they are ready. Then two, the pronouncement by the president, by the president of China, gives confidence to the Chinese investors, or gives confidence to them. It may surprise you to some of the investors we are running after us. And we give them an opportunity to tell us their proposals. For the same project, there are 2-3 proposals coming. And as the Minister of Trade said, by next month, a lot of them are coming in country. We give everybody the opportunity. So guys, if you have your Chinese investors, have no fear to put them to us. We are ready to talk to them. Don't bring them. It's your friend. No, I mean, I will talk to them. You don't need to pay me. Whatever it is, I'll be glad to talk to them and encourage them. Whatever transfers between you and the investor, that's your own business. But just to let you know, we are open, we are ready to accommodate investors. But let them know it's not business as usual. We can't go in the wrong direction. Now, in terms of key things we're looking at, because I'm not the sector specialist, I'm multi-sectorial. The rendezvous is very high on the table, and we're determined to deliver that. We have got proposals for energy, different forms of energy is on the table, ranging from solar to HFO, street lights, traffic lights, there was a table. They're coming, they're looking at doing the assessment. We also put our own assessment teams together. Looking at water supply project, water supply, you will agree with me, is one key priority in Freetown. And it's very much linked to the free education. Given the fact that teenagers have to stay long hours fetching water, they wake up very early in the morning to fetch water, and may have the expense of school attendance on time. That's affecting their schooling. And a lot of teenage pregnancies take place because the strains they go through, or the challenges they go through to fetch water. So we have to address it to the main business. So the possibility we're looking at is to get water from Robbery throughout my Shakat, Waterloo, and to Freetown. It's quite an huge investment, but we're prepared to do it. We think that's better than my mama project. Anyway. We're looking at possibility for ICT. The digital, the Minister of Information knows the details, but that's a possibility, the priority project of the agenda, the digital migration, which we spoke about this morning. We're looking at the other ICT component that can make the city safe. We've deliberately aired on projects from China that we think are faulty. We may, some of them we may not go with them, some of them we may consider some review. The conditions are favorable, we may probably think about them. Now, in summary, what's the importance of the visit was? The visit gives confidence to the Chinese association. That's one. It gives confidence. And it signifies a renewed relationship with China. I mean, the number one man of China was working with Mr. Bio right there. We are all there. I mean, I was lucky to shake hands with not an easy thing, my brother. Yes, I mean, I had the handshake with him. I had the photo with him. I mean, that man is number 2 man in the world for now. He's running for the number 1 position in the world. Huh? The second largest economy, which is more determined to take over the world. It exposes us to opportunities in private capital in China. Now we know how to access Chinese resources. It also created a platform for Chinese investors to interact with leadership. I mean, we are here, the president, the chief minister, the minister of finance, minister of information, minister of this. Nothing else can get the upper echelon than that. So the Chinese felt so confident. And for them, when the president speaks, they listen. They're not like us. When the president says, they speak. For Chinese, it's strong. Yeah, they are so disciplined. So these are the few opportunities. Well, let me just say in brief that we really have good opportunities in China. Only that, as a responsible government, we have to watch out. We have to make sure the terms are clear, the conditions are favorable, and we emphasize on skills transfer. We are going to emphasize on labor conditions for workers. I mean, as we get to the discussions, we have no reason to think they will not abide, because people in the past regimes put in front of them, I mean, the priorities of getting money from them. That's why they negotiated those bad deals. But we are not in for those bad deals. Every investment has to be beneficial to the country. Every